Hey everybody, Ms. Dupree here. In this video, we will look at the biotic and abiotic factors that make up ecosystems. You may have heard of the word ecosystem, but what exactly is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is all of the living and non-living things in a certain area that interact with each other in order to survive. There are many different ecosystems in the world. Desert ecosystems, ocean ecosystems, rainforest ecosystems, tundra ecosystems. Life exists in many different places on our planet. Various ecosystems are very different from each other. The organisms in the desert are not the same as the organisms in the ocean. The organisms in the rainforest could not survive in the tundra. This is because things like climate, temperature, weather, water, sunlight, soil, and other factors make conditions that create very different life forms in the different ecosystems. We will look at the different abiotic and biotic factors that make up an ecosystem, and then we will look at how the factors interact so that the organisms in the ecosystem can survive and reproduce. We'll start with abiotic factors. Bio means life. But when you put an A at the beginning of a word, it changes the meaning to not. So abiotic means not life. Abiotic factors are the non-living parts of an ecosystem that the organisms in the ecosystem need to survive. This includes air, water, rocks, soils, and minerals, weather and climate, temperature, sunlight, precipitation, either rain or snow, and shelter. Please pause the video now and add this information in the bubble map to your notebook. Press play when you are ready to continue watching. Now let's look at biotic factors. Bio means life, so biotic factors are the living parts of an ecosystem. This includes all organisms that exist in the ecosystem. An organism will either be a producer, consumer, or decomposer. Producers are the food makers of the ecosystem. They use sunlight to make food by photosynthesis. The consumers are the food eaters of the ecosystem. Consumers that are herbivores eat producers, or plants. Consumers that are carnivores eat other consumers, or animals. Consumers that are omnivores eat both producers and consumers. They'll eat plants and animals. Finally, there are decomposers. Decomposers get their energy by breaking down dead organisms. This acts like nature's recycling. The plants make the food, the animals eat the plants or eat the food, and the decomposers break down the dead organisms. Decomposers return nutrients that plants need to survive, thus starting the cycle all over again. Please pause the video now and add this information to your notebook. Press play when you are ready to continue watching. The important thing about biotic and abiotic factors is that in an ecosystem, these things are interacting. This means that they need and use each other for survival. In an ecosystem, there are abiotic interactions and biotic interactions. Let's look at a few examples. Organisms need air. Plants need carbon dioxide, and animals need oxygen. Birds use air to fly, to catch prey, or to escape predators. Using air would be an example of an abiotic interaction. Without air, the organisms could not survive. Organisms also need water to drink or to absorb. Fish use water as a habitat. Using water would be an example of an abiotic interaction. Without water, organisms could not survive. Rocks, soil, and minerals provide several uses for organisms. Animals use rocks and soil for shelter. Plants use soil to grow in, and they also use minerals in the soil. This is an example of an abiotic interaction. Without rocks, soil, and minerals, the organisms in ecosystems would not be able to survive. We have already learned that plants make their own food by photosynthesis. In order for plants to make food, they need sunlight. Sunlight is an essential abiotic interaction. Climate and weather are also very important abiotic factors. This includes temperature, amount of sunlight, and amount of precipitation, either rain or snow. Desert organisms are adapted to live in hot and dry environments with lots of sunlight but very little rain. Tundra organisms are adapted to live in very cold, snowy environments where there is limited sunlight but a good deal of snowy precipitation. These organisms are adapted to live in these exact environments, so if there are any changes, such as global warming heating up the temperature, or a drought reducing the amount of water, the organisms may not be able to survive the changes to the ecosystem. Climate and weather are examples of abiotic interactions. There are also biotic interactions. This is where living things interact with each other. The most obvious example is food chains and food webs. Organisms eat each other and are eaten by each other. If you do not have the producers making food, then the consumers cannot survive. If you do not have the decomposers breaking down dead things, then there would be no nutrients for the plants to continue making food. Food chains and food webs are examples of biotic interactions. Predator and prey relationships are another very important type of biotic interaction. An example is the Canada lynx and the snowshoe hare. The Canada lynx eats only snowshoe hares, and the snowshoe hares can only be caught by the Canada lynx. This predator-prey relationship needs to be in balance. If there are a lot of snowshoe hares, then the Canada lynx population will be large as well, because they have a lot of food to eat. However, if there are too many Canada lynx and not enough rabbits, then they will eat too many of the rabbits. The rabbit population will decline, and then so will the Canada lynx population. When one population goes up, the other goes up as well. When one population goes down, so does the other. This predator-prey relationship is an example of a biotic interaction. These two species cannot survive without each other. Reproduction is essential for all species to survive. If a species does not reproduce, it will die out and become extinct. Some organisms help other organisms with reproduction. An example would be a honeybee spreading pollen to help flowers reproduce. The honeybee gets food while the plant gets its pollen spread in order to reproduce. These organisms are helping each other in a biotic interaction. Another example would be shelter. Birds, koalas, and squirrels live in trees. The trees are living things that provide shelter to other organisms. This is yet another example of a biotic interaction. One last example of a biotic interaction would be the clownfish and the sea anemone. They help each other. The clownfish is not harmed by the sea anemone's poison, so the clownfish hides in the sea anemone. This helps to protect the clownfish. Meanwhile, the clownfish attracts predators to the sea anemone. The sea anemone stings the predators with its poison and gets its food. This helpful relationship between the sea anemone and the clownfish is another example of a biotic interaction. Please pause the video now and copy these examples of abiotic and biotic interactions into your notebook. Press play when you are ready to continue watching. Okay, that's it for abiotic and biotic factors. Remember, abiotic are the non-living parts of the ecosystem, and biotic are the living parts of the ecosystem. These things are all interacting so that the organisms can survive and reproduce. If you have any questions about this lesson, please ask your teacher. Good job.